Looks like it's going now.
Here we go.
Oh, you have 30 minutes maximum. How do I begin a podcast?
Are we live?
Yes.
Is this thing on?
Yes, this thing's on.
No, that's how you start.
Okay.
Is this thing on?
Is this thing on?
Testing.
Testing. 1, 2, 3. So, hello everybody to our first podcast. I have two lovely friends of mine here with me for the first time. This is really exciting. We have my friend Jovan.
Hi.
We have also my good friend Karel.
No.
The one, okay. So before we begin this discussion, I actually just want to say thank you to everybody who watched the first video that I put out. I don't know what I was expecting, maybe just 100 views or something like that, but it's now about
still like a good deal of people.
Yeah.
You know, just put it in that context of 100 people listening to what you have to say.
Yeah, exactly.
And you have 6 rooms of 100 people listening to what you have to say.
So for the fact that 600 people roughly have seen it now, I think there's been a couple shares. Some people have also commented on it. It has some likes. So that's just crazy.
Organic engagement.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy to me. So someday we'll be at 1 billion, maybe.
Maybe.
That'd be the ideal thing. Just reach everybody. But 600, that's a really awesome start.
That's a lot of rooms worth of 100 people.
Yeah.
It's like 1 billion people as well.
You were saying earlier, I've probably never talked to 600 people. You've never talked to 600 people in front of you. So
no, like giving a public speech to like 600 people. I think the most I ever did would be like 50 to 80, like max.
You, Carl, you ever talked in front of 600 people?
No.
How many consultants
15,
listen to your presentations on a daily basis?
So
how many meetings do you sit in on?
A lot of meetings where I don't say anything, and then I get yelled at for being quiet.
Yeah, Karel looks confused. Does he know what's happening?
Karel looks confused. Yeah.
So I'm already loving the little community engagement that we have, and if we keep that going, I think that's going to be just absolutely awesome.
Amazing.
I wanted specifically you two guys because I think that you guys are super interesting, and so maybe Jovan, what's your background? Who are you? Where are you from?
What's my background?
Yeah.
Should we answer through the lens of language or just?
Yeah. So like where are you from? Because I'm sure everyone watching is like, oh, who's this American?
Yeah. What kind of a name is Jovan?
Yeah.
Jovan.
My name is Jovan Markovic. That's the sort of the OG pronunciation of it. I am Serbian, contrary to the way that I sound, behave, and most things about me.
So can we actually hear a little Serbian just so people know you're actually native?
You have to say something that only a native Serbian would understand. Some kind of colloquial phrase. Or...
I got it. Šta će biti s kućom? Zapalit ću je. So for the 2 Serbians that might be listening to this, like,
your mom and your dad?
Possibly. Yeah, our mom. So that is a very popular, let's say, phrase from a very popular Serbian movie.
Nice.
Not a Serbian movie. That's a different can of worms that we're not going to open right now. But a random Serbian film. And yeah, it's basically like, what's a very popular phrase from a movie from the States?
I am your father.
It's kind of like in that realm. It's that popular. Okay. So yeah, my first language is Serbian, which is a Southern Slavic language. Very complicated. 7 cases, many tenses.
Oh, just like Czech.
Just like Czech. Yeah, but more cases.
Hold on. 7 cases, but more cases?
Oh, sorry. No, but more tenses.
Okay.
Sorry. So 7 cases, but more tenses. So, and then I've been living in Prague for 6 years. I moved here after high school because my dad worked here for a really long time. So when I was done, I moved here with my mom and we're all here, which is great. So I've been like learning Czech like on and off for 6 years. And only in the last year, let's say, I have actually like started taking classes, like dedicated every week. Mm-hmm. So I'd say right now in Czech, I am like at a B2 level, I would say, is what I'm trying to pass, which is great. I think it helps me out a lot. And I could get into some situations where like knowing Czech was really, really useful.
Right.
So when people ask me like how many languages do I speak, I like to say 2.5. because I am fluent in Serbian, obviously, and English. But then Czech is like not quite there yet. So I don't want to say that I speak 3 languages because I don't feel like it counts.
I say 2.5.
2.5.
People
Yeah,
so what's your background, Karel, for the viewers?
So I went to high school with Chris in the States. I was born and raised in New Jersey. Grew up speaking Czech and Polish at home. So my mom is Polish, my dad is Czech, and I guess for the linguophiles out there, my parents had their own little unique language, I guess you could say, where my mom spoke Polish to my dad. My dad generally understood. He spoke Czech back to her, so they were speaking to each other in 2 different languages that are fairly similar. And sorry, what were you gonna?
You said your mom speaks like broken Czech or something like that.
She does speak broken Czech. So
I thought both of your parents were Czech. So when I found out that your mom was Polish, that was a nice like bit of lore that I was that I did not know.
Well, and back in middle school, for the longest time, I didn't know his background at all. When he told me about like, oh yeah, I speak Czech and Polish, I was like, wait a minute, you're native in 3 languages?
But Polish is my 0.5 language. When I tell people I speak 2.5 languages.
Gotcha. Okay.
So my Czech is improving. Obviously, English is by far my best language. Czech is improving because of work.
Yes.
And Polish needs to catch up at some point. I'm hoping I could work on my Polish, but that's an adventure for a little further down the road. And I moved here 5 months ago, and now I'm living with Chris, which is crazy.
Were you nervous about having to work in Czech?
Yes, very nervous. The whole interview process was pretty nerve-wracking.
Oh God, yeah.
When I was applying for jobs here, but luckily it worked out. So
yeah,
I was really nervous when Vasek was my first interviewer, and he was like, so I saw on your CV you speak some Czech, like, and then he asked in Czech, like, takže můžeme mluvit česky, and I said, yo,
you were like, pivo?
Yeah, I was like, yo, určitě. And then we said nothing else in Czech. We moved on in English.
Yeah, and Vasek was like, Okay, anyway.
Yeah, so that was interesting. But can we hear a little Polish?
Yeah, I guess I'll flex my 0.5.
Yeah, pretend this is your mom. This is your mom over here.
Dzień dobry, mamo. Mam nadzieję, że spałaś dobrze i chyba pójdziesz do kościoła dzisiaj rano. To powiedz Panu Bogowi, że mówię hello. So I said, good morning, Mom.
That sounds legit to me.
I hope you slept well. I think you're going to go to church this morning and tell God I say hi.
Okay. Maybe I will check in with a Polish friend of mine that I have, and I'll send her this little snippet.
Yes.
And I will ask her.
I'm sure they're going to be
how authentic it is.
I'm sure it's not going to be authentic, because in my head I'm translating directly from English.
Okay.
Yep.
And which is something I'm still working on with Czech. So it's probably going to sound a little funky to a native speaker, but again, it's going to be a work in progress. So
honestly, man, I feel like my Serbian is getting to the same point, and that's something that we can touch on like later.
Yeah.
But hey, Mr. Host, who are you?
All right.
What are you? What's your deal? You're the guy running the show. We got to know about you.
That's true. So I'm just like you guys. Well, I'm just like Karel, just an American who moved to Prague. I moved actually mostly for the language, which is, I think, weird for anyone to hear anyone say.
Especially for a fairly niche language.
Yeah.
Yeah, everyone asks me, like, why do you speak Czech? Like, what's it used for? Why? They just are completely lost. And I say, I don't know. I love how it sounds. So that's what brought me to the country in the first place. Being able to travel around. It's the center of Europe, so why not?
Yeah. So this is Central Europe, let it be known, not Eastern Europe.
Yes. For anyone watching, this is Central Europe, not Eastern Europe, at least in my heart, and probably in yours as well.
And the hearts of all Czechs, they get a little annoyed when you say it's Eastern Europe.
Yes.
Yeah. Ale já něco řeknu česky, protože já bych chtěl to ukázat, že to umím. Já jsem to ukázal v pár videích už jako předtím, ale So
just for I think it's important for English viewers, especially American viewers, to understand how insane it is for an American to learn a language like Czech
It is
on your
nuts.
own self-study in high school. It's wild. What Chris did is wild. So
Yeah.
just putting that out there. This
What
isn't
happens when
this
you have
isn't
too much
this isn't
time on
like
your
learning
hands.
Spanish. This is
No.
like a whole nother level. So nothing against any Spanish people, but
Well,
but this is
No, totally not.
crazy.
But that
Crazy
is
to learn.
something we should also dive into that at some point.
Yeah.
To just, so we could kind of paint a picture of what it is like to go from a language like English with like relatively simple grammar and one case. The cases are I'm stuck on the cases. I think they're a big part of like
Yeah.
what makes Slavic languages difficult. And then shift from English, a single case language, to a 7-case language like Czech, which is I shifted from a 7-case language, which was Serbian, into a 7-case
another
language, which is Czech, and the cases don't exactly match up,
Yeah.
and that throws me off so much when I'm learning.
Yeah.
And I'm having a really tough time. So somebody who has to like first wrap their head around the concept of cases and then
Yeah.
go and like learn them, it's really impressive.
And
Well-
Chris, well, before I forget, one side note, I think, and this could be an interesting idea for a future video of yours, is walking people through your learning process. I know you
Yeah.
showed me your first notebook where you were, I guess, essentially writing every day in Czech, kind of a diary. And
Yeah, so I had the diary where I was actually practicing the language, writing random stories or how my day was, etc. And then I had the other notebook where I was taking notes about the grammar, how do the cases work,
so
the
that,
prepositions.
I think that'd be super cool for people to see, just again in through the lens of self-study.
Yeah.
To see how you went about learning Czech.
Yeah, and I think I have that just right up
Yeah.
here. So,
Yeah.
did you guys get a chance to watch the video that I put out? I think last week or something.
Yes. I watched it as soon as it came out.
Okay. And what do you guys think about that? Just a couple opinions. Do you guys believe there's some hardest language in the world? Do you guys feel that Czech is actually for you really hard in that?
Czech is tough. But first of all, I think you did a great job in that video.
Thank you.
I think you had a lot of energy, and I love listening to you talk. And
Yes.
it was just really cool to see like a side of Chris just like fired up with passion for language.
Right.
Yeah.
That's the big thing.
Pretty cool.
I think
Little
what-
sparkle in his eye.
Exactly.
you know? Yeah.
When someone's talking about something they're truly interested in, passionate about, and are doing it for themselves, you're not doing it to impress the world. You're just like, I'm passionate about languages, kind of sharing.
You
it with
weren't.
others.
You didn't care about impressing other people, and in turn, that's what impresses other people.
Yeah. And in fact, I think I'll be doing this mostly for like my students, to be honest. They
That's
have
adorable.
Yeah, they have so many questions for me. They always want to know what's the difference between this thing and that thing. And it's like, okay, thank you for a video idea. I'll make a video on that. I'll do my best to explain it to you right now. But if you ever need to return to it, I can make a resource for my students.
Reference, yeah.
And I think that's something that's, it's going to be super fun.
Chris, you mentioned like your students and teaching, and you mentioned this person called Vasek. Like, do you want to kind of frame that for people and
Yeah, so
help them understand where all this is coming from?
So actually, Jovan, I guess maybe this is crucial information.
A good bit of context. I wouldn't
Yeah.
say crucial, but yeah.
So Jovan and I used to work for the same language school. It's a amazing school called Berlitz, if anyone knows it.
Yeah. Shout out Berlitz.
Yeah, I didn't know anything about it until I had an interview with them, because I talked to someone who actually worked with them, for them. I don't know what the right word is, but
Here.
yeah.
Who was it?
No. So my mom knows a guy who worked internationally, and turns out he worked for Blitz. He said, just shoot them an email, see what they say.
Yeah.
So then this guy Vasek that I always bring up, and he's the person I always use as my examples with my students. It's like, imagine you go to the store with, Vasek. It's always Vasek. And it's funny because another teacher uses Michal. So Michal is our, I guess, director of the office. Vasek is basically right there with him, more or less. He works in sales mostly. But yeah, it's the first person that I interviewed with. I always use Vasek. So Vasek is my new favorite Czech name, I guess.
But it's a nickname, right? It's not the full thing.
Yeah, so his nickname, or whatever you want to call it, is Vasek. but formally it's Václav.
Yeah, because Czechs love nicknames.
Yes.
Very true.
There's a nickname for everything.
Speaking of which, what's the nickname for Karel?
Kaya.
Kaya. Oh, I'm gonna use that.
Kaya.
Yeah.
Carlito.
Carlito.
Okay.
Carlito,
In these circles, it's Carlito.
So I wanted to go back to that. So you guys are like, it's super cool. You learn Czech. It must have been so hard. Well, that's what I was trying to push in the video. It's like the level of how hard something's going to be just really depends on your motivation. And I had all the motivation in the world.
Yeah.
I don't know where exactly it came from. I wanted a secret language. Turned out this guy spoke a language that I liked.
Cool.
Yeah. And that's the history. I mean, it could have been anything else, I guess. It's just that I happened to hear Czech, because Czech is, you'll maybe not believe this, but Czech is easier than inventing your own language.
True. That's exactly what popped into my head just now. I was like, he wanted a secret language, but he wasn't going to go and like make his own version of like Klingon and Dothraki and like splice that together with Navi and just like make it this whole thing.
Right.
Just using language that already exists, but nobody knows.
Yeah. Or I think I used to have this funny thing, and I guess this touches a broader theme of communication outside of maybe language specifically. When I was learning tennis, my coach would try to communicate with me in grunts, and going back to our caveman days, because I was a horrible student. I would not pay attention. I'd constantly space out, and he would explain things to me, and I just wouldn't pay attention. He was like, I'm just gonna try grunting at you. He's like, like forehand,
Well, you can understand how much power you need if he's like, or if he's like,
Yeah.
It's how much oomph.
I honestly think in this
that.
case, grunting was more effective form of communication than English. So that's an option too if you want to invent your own grunting language, because that kind of keeps things simple.
Well, I do have my own alphabet, which I know, I think I mentioned to Karel. I don't know if I mentioned that to you, Jovan, but
No.
I did invent my own alphabet. I took inspiration from, I think, like Greek, Russian, and probably something else. And I made like a 33, I think, letter alphabet. Maybe it's 36, I forget. But I forgot it already.
Okay.
But I have screenshots of what are the letters, what are the phonetics behind each letter, and like that. So, and Sam tried to decipher it.
Did he get it?
No, not even.
Oh, if Sam didn't get it,
Yeah.
then that's...
He had a good approach to it. He was like, okay, based on how often I see a letter, I can assume that those are the vowels. And I was like, okay, good. But you can't really get much else from it.
So I was listening to a podcast with Jordan Peterson, and he was talking about some ancient language where the letters of the language also had a numerical value associated with them. So obviously we have the alphabet, and then we have the, I forget what you call it, 0 to 9. We have that.
There's numerals.
We have those numerals, but apparently there was this language that combined an alphabet and numerals in one, which is kind of a wild concept. Someone maybe would look it up, read up. But I think that's an interesting idea if you can...
So you can count by using just letters.
So something like that. I don't know exactly what it was used for.
Count by using letters.
Okay.
But there was some kind of like quantifiable value associated with the letters themselves.
It's not the Roman numerals, is it? Where they have
Kind of
the
like
I,
Scrabble,
the M?
the language. Like every
Y, Z, X,
yeah, they all get points. No, they all have a numerical value assigned to them.
No, I think this goes way further before the Romans.
Okay. So what I wanted to bring you guys here, which, by the way, thank you for being awake so early. It's like 9 o'clock.
Oh man,
We got here.
10 o'clock.
10 o'clock.
10 o'clock
Brutal.
already.
We were messing around with the
Yeah.
tech check for a little bit.
So thank you for that, and I hope that you guys will enjoy this and want to do maybe a part 2 at some point.
See.
I actually talk about this a lot with people because they say that, first of all, my voice changes in different languages, which I find really interesting. And
You definitely sound more sexy in Czech.
Thank you. And helps if you have a really good mic, I think.
Yeah.
So not only do our voices change, which actually, what do you guys think about you? Because when you speak Serbian, not gonna lie, I feel like you're speaking with your American accent kind of turned on. But I don't know. I haven't heard Serbian so much to be able to tell. But what do you think? Does your voice kind of change?
That like hurts a lot to hear that because it's.
Yeah, I was gonna say I saw a little pain in
There was
eyes.
a little pain in my eyes, man. It's a thing I wanted to touch on. So, does my voice change? Yes. I've had people say that I sound different, and that also like my personality changes.
Right.
And apparently when I speak English, I'm more approachable. I'm more like friendly. But that comes from people who don't speak Serbian or don't understand it. So when I speak Serbian, I guess just because it's kind of like a rough around the edges Slavic language, it tends to sound like kind of like standoffish and kind of cold.
Yeah, that's
kind of sexy. I've been told. I like
stereotype.
that.
I think that's a stereotype.
I
Maybe
think so.
further east too, where it's like, oh, it's a little more fiery.
So I don't know if my voice changes. And then not like I don't feel like it does, or I don't feel like my personality does. But yes, there is like at this point, Czech and English, they're starting to kind of bleed into my Serbian, which is my least used language. I only pretty much speak it with my parents, and that's a very limited set of topics that we cover. So I feel like I'm losing touch with Serbian every single year, and it stresses me out more and more every single year. I've been feeling this way for a couple of years now. And so every time I go back to Belgrade, and I'm going back at the end of August with some friends to celebrate my birthday, I always kind of steady myself for my friends to pick on me for the first couple of days, just because it takes me a while to get back into the groove.
Like it's still all there, it's just a little rusty, or are you actually forgetting things and it's seeming more like a foreign language?
It's definitely not seeming like a foreign language, but if you told me like, oh, Jovan, just say something really profound in Serbian right now, I would be like, because I don't know that I have like the necessary vocabulary. Like I didn't lose it. It's just imagine only speaking English to your parents, like. And not even like sitting down and having like a real conversation, but just kind of like everyday things.
Right.
After a while, you would lose the ability to express some things at will.
Right.
Just because it's a thing of practice. So if I move back to Belgrade, I will be back up to speed in like a couple months. But there is definitely some like dust and rust.
It's somewhere in the back of your head.
Yeah.
And it just has to be, you have to locate it and you have to. Yeah.
For example, if I were to try to express what I'm doing right now in Serbian, it would be a little bit tough. It would take a little bit of like reconfiguring, and then I would definitely like use some words and say some things that don't exactly like.
People would be like, "Oh, Jovan, are you actually Serbian?"
Yeah.
Jovan.
That's a common one. Yeah.
Are there any impacts on your Serbian because of Czech in terms of the cases? Like, do you sometimes add the Czech ending maybe instead of the Serbian ending?
No,
right
but
case?
sometimes I mess up I'll mess up like a pronoun or a preposition or something like this. Because so the Czech and Serbian have the same cases, but they have different cases used in different situations. So, like the accusative in Serbian would be used, and then it's like the third case, the dative would be used in Czech, and it kind of throws me off. And I've actually been told that Czech has changed my pronunciation because Czech is a softer language than Serbian is. Serbian is really rough around the edges.
Yeah.
But because I kind of got used to this like softer like sh type that we have. Yeah. So the sh sound in Serbian is sh. It's very sharp. It's like škola. Škola. That's like school in Serbian, škola. And then in Czech it's like škola. So it's a little like
škola.
It's a little softer. So it's a sh versus a sh. You know? And so I'm kind of starting to lose that, and people back home notice to the point where the lady that sold me my legendary pants. Like this ties everything together. So she sold me my legendary pants 2 years ago, and she's like, you're not from here, are you? Like, you don't live here anymore.
No.
And that cut so deep. Like, I was not able, I have not,
man.
I don't think I fully emotionally recovered from that moment.
Oh, dude.
But yeah, that was the first point at which I was like, oh shit, I'm
Stab
losing
in
it
the
a
heart,
little bit.
bro. Stab in the heart.
Yeah, it's tough.
Well, I think one thing that I've noticed is that the more I got into other languages, the more I started to stutter in English.
Ah, yeah.
And I don't know if the two are directly related, but and it's not like I spend all my days just speaking other languages, but it's like I can be very introverted, just get lost into my music. And as like everyone knows, I don't really listen to American music. So especially with that, in that sense, I'm focusing more on other languages. And even if I'm listening to American music, I'm still just not like speaking it because I might just be sitting there playing a game or I don't know what. And then over the course of like all of my college years and then even after, I feel like that inactivity has maybe made me stutter a bit more in English. I don't know how you guys feel, but I'm actually, I think, not way different in my languages because I still try to let my American culture and whatnot into the other languages that I speak through messing up grammar on purpose, just trying to speak in a way that I feel like is funny or something like that. But
yeah, I feel that. I do that with Czech also.
So like, do you guys feel like a hard change, or what do your friends say? Do your friends tell you that you're way different in English or Serbian or Czech-Polish or?
Well,
what about you, Karel? You have a good frame of reference because you speak English
like you
a lot,
grew
but
up
you
with
work
them,
right?
In Czech now. So.
First assumption is that I have friends. So if
You
I
do
had
have-
friends,
we know
I'm
you
just
have
kidding,
friends.
I'm just kidding. No, there's the American humor, the stupid dry American humor.
Yeah.
But what do my friends say? Well, honestly, I haven't asked my American friends what my personality's like and my Czech friends what my personality's like. But you might be the best judge of that, Chris, since you know me through both lenses.
So, for example, like Karel, I've seen you in Czech, Polish a little bit, and English, of course. And I personally felt like there's a big difference between you in English and you in Czech, especially because when I see you here, it's in the Czech Republic. It's not even in America anymore. I feel like you're much more free and weird and silly and stuff like that. But I think a couple of our other friends have kind of disagreed that how I think you are in Czech is how they also think you are in English. So
But
I don't know, maybe
friends
maybe
that don't speak English or don't speak Czech.
Yeah, friends that don't speak Czech.
Okay.
Like Michael, Alfred, anyone like that. I think I feel like they maybe know you better in English than maybe I have known you. But,
That's true. So you think I'm...
but that's my perspective.
You're
that
assuming I'm more free in English.
No, I think you're more free in Czech. I feel like he has a more spirited, or he has a more free-spirited way of acting, even. Not even just like speaking, but acting, and how I see you with your sister's cats and stuff like that. I don't know. Have you haven't interacted with him so much in Czech, but like
not really, no.
What would you say his English is like? His English Karel is free spirited and all that.
English Karel.
Yeah.
Okay. You want me to like break down what his personality is like?
Yeah. What do you think?
He's just a real personable weirdo.
Okay.
like a very open, like kind, quirky dude who will say things unprompted.
Yeah.
About the relationship status of his sister. But yeah, I have not interacted with him extensively in Czech ever, but you have a good frame of reference for that because what do your colleagues say?
Yeah.
Like, I feel like that is more, let's say, telling.
So I think at work, I think I mentioned this earlier, I generally... I think like an American, but I'm speaking Czech. I'm not.
What does it mean
like
to think like an American? Like you
The
think in
types
English?
of jokes, I guess, that you
I guess
can get away with.
the humor, the way I talk. I know people have said at work that I'm generally a very open person. I'm not really afraid to I essentially have nothing to hide. Well, some stuff to hide, but I don't kind of put a wall up when I meet new people.
Yeah.
And I think that's more common from what I've seen in the Czech Republic, where, for example, they ask me why I came here, and I say, well, my family's moving back. I wanted to, get a new job, and I broke up with my girlfriend after 7 years. And they're like, whoa, well, that's a little,
So
sharing a little too much there. But
are there some things you'll say in a different language that you won't say in some language? Like, for example, I can say so many more things in Czech, Russian, Italian, whatever. Doesn't matter, because I don't have necessarily the same connection to it as I do with like the English words, whether it's jokes or cursing, especially.
So you're more free because you're not bound by the culture.
Oh, I feel that.
By like
As directly.
the culture, or the F word. I can't say that in English just
Really?
just like that. But I don't have the same connection with it
Yes.
in any other language. If let's say Chinese, I have the least connection with Chinese. Or let's take any other language at all. I can just say the worst words in those languages because I don't have the connection.
You haven't seen a Chinese person react. Oh my God, Chris, what did you just say?
Yeah, maybe I haven't
stuff.
seen the people react to it. It's a deep connection like that.
Mm-hmm.
And what about you? Because your English is just like amazing.
Thank you.
But have
Much
you
appreciated.
made the same kind of like native connections with certain things?
Like that is a really interesting question, and I think about this a lot. And I think this is actually what leads me to be which is what made me become more confident as a person, is like moving to Czech Republic and then speaking to everyone in English, where it just does not have the same weight that like Serbian had, like for me growing up. So I actually was fairly extroverted in Serbia also, but then it just like kind of amplified when I was here, and then it bled back into Serbian. So now I'm kind of both.
More
Now
yeah.
I'm like extroverted on both fronts, and it does help. And it's a lot easier to do certain things, like to like compliment people and tell people you care about them, and to be like really good at flirting, because it does not carry the same weight. Like there's there's almost like no like risk involved.
Yeah.
Because in English you like don't exactly like in English I still don't exactly understand like the weight of these words.
Okay.
So that's interesting that in this case culture is kind of the limiting factor, where I think a lot of the time the argument's made like, oh man, speaking English in America, this is where the language should naturally flourish the most. But in a sense, we're kind of saying the opposite, which is interesting. And I think in a lot of cases it does apply, because there are these cultural norms, right? Where, again, if you're probably going down the street dropping the F-bomb, so whoa, that just feels uncomfortable, because how people would react, and you probably expect them to react a certain way. But
it's also because of like how I grew up. I wasn't around a family who was just dropping whatever word they decided to drop. I think I was probably pretty protected from speech, most likely.
yeah,
Like I think my parents were the kind where they tried to keep this speech around me relatively clean, and if I heard anything, maybe it was like just in some kind of off conversation where I wasn't supposed to be listening or something, which it's freed up, the older I've gotten, but still it's that it's just how I was brought up that it was kind of protected.
yeah.
But then, like your dad, for example, when I met your dad, and I don't think you know this story, Jovan. So I met his dad for the first time, and he said you should go up to him and speak a little bit of Czech. And I had no idea who his dad was, his dad's personality or anything. And I go up to his dad, and his dad already knows me. He knows me as the friend who's learning Czech. And we shake hands, we say hi, I guess, or something like that. And he says, okay, so this is the guy. And the first words I hear out of his dad's mouth are like curse words in Czech. And then Karl jumps in and he's like, oh yeah, Dad, he also knows this, that, and the other thing. And then I was like, okay, I guess I'll roll with it. I also know this one and that one. And that was just so interesting that like a parent can just be so like outgoing with that.
So two actual interesting points on that. So speaking Czech and Polish at home. So my dad was much more open with teaching us curse words and stuff than my mom, who I think because of her very Catholic upbringing, we didn't really learn any of that kind of terminology.
True.
And specifically on the topic of curse words, for example, I'm not going to say them now, but there's some curse words in Czech that my dad didn't fully understand how bad they are.
Right.
And he would be sitting with either close friends or family, and he would just drop this word like it's nothing, and people would be like,
oh my God, did he just say that?
Yeah.
He didn't understand that, and eventually he'd say, like, you can't really go around just using this
Right.
5-letter word that starts with K.
Right.
And
That was fairly pedestrian though. Yeah, is it?
Apparently it's pretty bad.
Yeah.
Oh, see, it's this concept at
Yes,
work
yes.
right now because I don't get it. I don't get like how bad it is because I hear it so much, and it's that one word that unites all Slavic languages. It's the linchpin to every Slavic language.
Yeah.
So that's kind of an interesting idea because my dad was born here. He has connection to Czech culture, but he hasn't spent a lot of time actually living here. So
Because he moved away when he was 5,
he was
I think.
5. Yes. Moved to the US when he was 5. So there's that reverse. I guess you could some kind of reverse example where, you know, Jovan was saying he feels more free speaking English here, and in this case, my dad is just saying stuff in Czech, and he's unaware of kind of the weight.
And then do you speak any different language, not Czech, like I don't know, Italian, Chinese, Indonesian?
Do I know any of these
Yeah.
languages?
So like you speak English, Serbian, a little bit of Czech. Anything else?
No.
Have you tried any?
I mean, I was in school for German.
Okay.
Like in high school and elementary school, I learned German for like 8 years, or I
Okay.
was studying German for 8 years, and it's a real shame that I haven't gotten better at it. I guess if I ever master Czech, that will be the second language I move to.
So
just
useful
for
here.
Yeah, just for utility's sake is
Yeah.
the thing. Like when I say that to a lot of people, they're like, "Oh, but German sounds so rough, and German is like this, and why wouldn't you learn Spanish? It sounds so much better." And I'm like, well, first of all, I feel like German gets a bad rap for like no reason. Because when you hear two native German speakers speak, it actually sounds quite nice. You know, it's not all like demonic incantations. It sounds good. And also just for utility's sake. Like it's, if you know German in the Czech Republic, it's a real asset.
At work, especially.
Yes.
Yeah, they're like,
You know German? You know German? You know anyone who could do this project that speaks German?
And so through those 8 years, did you feel any connection to the language? Was it just like
Not at
absolutely
all.
nothing? Did
Not at all. I was just learning it honestly for a grade, which is such a shame. Like,
Yeah.
if I could go back, I would study so much harder.
and
Like,
that
it is not like we in schools you kind of have to learn languages, you know, it's just like a thing, but you don't really understand the value of what being like fluent in a language is until you're way older. And at that point you're like a little bit more behind, and you don't have the same amount of time and like freedom and lack of responsibility to really just crack into a language. So if I could go back, besides mathematics, German is the other subject that I would have been going like really like hard at.
there's something I wanted to mention based on what you just said. Now I can't remember.
Doesn't matter. You want to go back to your video? Like remember that talking point from the beginning but just like the topic of the most difficult language, because you say that it's not a thing, it's nothing.
Yeah.
I wouldn't necessarily agree because of like the angle that you like approached it from.
Okay.
What's your thoughts? Because Chris and I have had a bit of like a back and forth about this, mostly in his YouTube comments.
Yeah.
For that organic, you know, engagement.
Yeah.
But what's your thoughts?
I'm probably somewhere in the middle where they're definitely your point at the beginning where people like to think that their language is the hardest, and there's kind of that inherent, you could say, like nationalistic bias, like, oh man, you know, we're Czech and Czech is super hard and that makes us really good. And, we're better than everyone else. And then, Chinese is really hard. I think there's definitely a little bit of that, like this kind of play whose language is harder.
Yeah.
But I do think also it depends on context and where you grew up. Like someone who grows up speaking Chinese, to them, it's normal. Like they just grew up speaking Chinese. So maybe when they learn another language, it seems easier to them. Or I guess would seem harder to them because that's foreign. Like, and I think inherently, if you learn something when you're young and you're growing up, you just do it because that's what you do.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to learn some language to communicate.
But I think one of the reasons why people say that their language is hard is it could be for like a nationalistic thing. Like it's maybe like
pride.
a kind of pride. Like our language is difficult and there's a lot of intricacies and all that stuff. But also I think that they're prone to say that's hard because they know all of these little details, especially because they were forced probably to learn the language in school, like the same way I didn't like my English classes.
This is very formal.
It's formal teaching. It's learning all the little things that you probably don't care about, that you don't need to know. Like when I studied Czech, I don't know how much I really got into the grammar of it. I mean, I know that I studied the cases, and other than that, I don't know what else I really studied in terms of grammar. A lot of grammar things I think I learned just naturally. Like I asked, okay, why does this word come first? Why is this the word order? And I just put it together piece by piece as I went along, but I didn't learn this stuff like as some kind of a structure, but like that's how you would learn it in school, at least in the earlier years. And if you're not a language person already, then you're going to not like it. And that's why I think people who don't like it say that it's hard. I think people that do like it can find a way to at least say it's okay or something.
Like that's the angle that you approached this question from in your video.
Yeah.
You were referring more so to like the amount of effort that you're willing to put into something.
Yeah.
And that's like the angle that like I disagree with. Like I think I love the message of it. Is like if you want to learn something, like nothing is truly hard because it doesn't feel like effort.
Yeah.
But then there like depending on what you apply that for, there can be an objective difference. For example, like I could learn how to solve a Rubik's Cube, a 3x3, and because that's fun for me, it doesn't feel like hard work. But if I want to learn how to play the piano, it could not feel like hard work because I want to do it. Right. But objectively, it is a more complex skill that takes a lot more work, a lot more practice. So if you were to put those things on paper, like yes, on paper, learning the piano would be like objectively more difficult. It takes more time, takes more concentration, takes more practice. Neither of them might feel difficult if you like it, but I feel like one of them just inherently has more effort, involvement, energy, time, practice that goes into it than the other one. And I think it's the same thing with languages, but I'll touch on that.
I think there are definitely ways to quantify complexity. And this would actually be for background, well, you guys know that I love, I mean, you love spreadsheets too, but I love putting everything in spreadsheets and organizing in spreadsheets. So it would be cool to come up with a formula, Chris, where you can try to objectively quantify the difficulty of languages and come up with some kind of ranking. No, it's not necessarily the argument or your message for the video, but I think in terms of steel manning your argument or anyone else's argument that, it all depends on your passion and how much you want to learn, where you say, okay, the alphabet has this many characters and it's this, it has this many tenses, it has this many cases.
Yeah.
Whatever. There's this level of colloquial terminology, and based on that, and different weights for different aspects.
So I think that there's a clear difference what languages are more or less complex. And what I didn't talk about in the video is any of their complexities. What I want to talk about in the next one is what I think, for me anyway, and what I think is the better way to look at languages is what's the difference between complexity and difficulty? because I think that all languages are different levels of complexity, but what's hard is not anything that's objective. I think hard is never objective, unless it's for something like, I don't know, a human trying to fly. But that's because that's something we can all agree on. Mm-hmm. But we can never agree on what is the hardest language. And it's because of that I think the question doesn't make sense. We're using the wrong words in the question. The question should be, what's the most complex language?
Yeah.
And for that, we can do something like quantify based on tenses or cases or whatever. But just because something's complex doesn't mean it's hard. And that's where the personal experience comes in, because like Czech, the cases already make the language a lot more complex.
Right.
And at first I thought it was hard because I did not see the patterns. I thought it was all random and it just did not make sense to me. But then after just more experience, more time with it, more looking at it, and I color coded some tables, I was like, oh, there's actually these repeating patterns and it's not as complex as I thought it was. And therefore I think it's actually kind of easy, and it's easier the more you practice it. And just, it's easy to say something's hard when you're bad at it. And it's easy to say something's easy when you're good at it. And getting good at it is just, I think, a matter of time and practice.
And passion.
And having the passion and motivation to continue with it. So I think we could debate, for a while, especially without knowing the actual details, what's the most complex language. But I think kind of objectively, we have to say the hardest language doesn't exist. We all have a different opinion what that would be.
So there's the breakdown, is that when watching your video, I did not differentiate between like complexity and difficulty.
Yeah.
So that's why I found myself disagreeing, because I was like, well, there definitely are languages that are harder than other languages. And then like one thing that would be key to defining like difficulty is like what the rep language is, It's like, so if you start with an Indo-European language, if you start with German, English, like something, you start with something like this, and then you try to learn another one in the same language group, it's a lot easier than if you try to learn like a Southeastern Asian language. If you try to learn Chinese, Japanese, like Thai, that's going to be way tougher for you. But then for them, it's moving back the other way. So if you speak Chinese, you can pick up the languages that are around it with like more, let's say, you can pick it up more easily than if you were to go like westward and the other way around.
So this is an interesting point, because I just spent the last 5 minutes thinking in my head that there's probably some kind of sweet spot if you speak one language and you want to learn another language. If it's too similar, there are probably too many small nuances that are hard to keep track of.
Right, like Jovan was talking about Serbian with Czech.
Right.
They're so similar that it's sometimes difficult.
So I think the sweet spot is maybe you want the easiest language to learn, maybe on average, is a language broadly kind of in the same family, where it's a little similar, but it's not so similar that you're constantly saying, oh, is it this or is it that? But I would say, I imagine the hardest, like you said, is going from something like Serbian to Thai, because that's literally opposite ends of the planet.
Yeah, and I think some people asked me in the past, like, how do you keep the difference between Russian and Czech? And what I think actually helps me with that is the accent. Because, for example, the words are different. You have koshechka and kochka, which, I don't know, I see the difference. I'll never confuse those. I'll never forget which one's Russian or Czech. But you'll hear the word in a different context, but you'll also hear it with a different accent. So I just think that alone helps me to differentiate. Like with Russians, I guess stereotypically they have a deeper voice or something. And I think my voice in Czech is a little bit higher than my Russian. Mm-hmm. And so when I'm saying just a word like kochka, I don't have that same like koshechka. Which I think maybe even there, I probably heard it slightly. So it helps me to keep them separated because I know how they're supposed to sound And I think my ear is better for hearing than like my mouth is to reproduce. So I can really differentiate by sound. Maybe I don't do it so much myself or not as perfectly as I could, but and I don't know how you guys feel with any languages. Like okay, so for example, this is something I really wanted to ask you about because Czech and Polish are pretty similar. And then like, do you remember growing up ever speaking some kind of mix?
Yeah, I would definitely get confused. I would definitely get, and it didn't help. Like I mentioned earlier, that my mom would speak Polish to my dad, and he would answer in Czech.
Right.
There were definitely moments. I can't think of a specific word or a specific example where I would consistently make the same mistake, use a Polish word in Czech or use a Czech word in Polish. But it was interesting with those two languages where there were some words that were the same but meant completely two different things. Like
Shukat.
Oh, that's a tough one.
That's
just
the
the
classic
greatest example.
So for people who don't know, in Polish, szukać means to look for, to search. And
same thing in Ukrainian, I think.
In Czech, szukat means to have adult fun.
Yeah, but in like this is a very, very derogatory term for it.
Yes.
It's the worst possible term for it.
Yes, it's not a nice word.
So I wonder like which one came first, who came from what, and like I'm really curious as to why they're even so similar. But did you ever have a run-in with that actual example? You wanted to tell your mom you're looking for something, but you used the Czech word by accident, or
No, that never happened to me. But I know that my dad, whenever my mom says she's looking for something in Polish, he just giggles.
Right. Especially knowing your dad.
Yeah.
So okay. So Jovan, you wanted to talk about something Karel was saying.
Yes. So Karel was saying that there's a word that sounds basically the same in Polish and in Czech, which is which word in Polish, please, because it's offensive in Czech.
Szukać.
There we go. So in Polish, it means to search. In Czech, it's a really, really derogatory term for sex. And funny enough, there's the equivalent to this in Serbian also.
Really, I wanted to ask about that. But
Yeah. And it's also a very derogatory term for sex. So in Serbian, we have this phrase for like moving around, kind of like
dancing.
No, not really. Kind of like jostling. You know, You're not really moving with any sort of purpose. You're just kind of like jostling around in your seat.
Yeah.
It's mrdati.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yes, nice. Yep.
And then in Czech, that means something completely different. So my dad had a really, really uncomfortable situation. Actually, just at the Atrium Flora, which I believe is like over there,
very close.
like 15 years ago, or even more so, when he moved to Prague, there was like this big aquarium there in the middle, and there were these fish which were like swimming around. And then he saw like two fish which were not moving at all, and he wanted to like express that in Czech to his broken Czech to his colleagues.
Yeah.
He's like,
and he said, and yeah, that's kind of how he said it. Like the equivalent of what he said in Czech is like "hele tyhle ryby se nemrdají," which is like, which is not great. So people were very confused by that. So that was actually really fun. I have another one.
And maybe could you translate that to English just so people?
Yes. So basically, my dad wanted to say like, oh, these fish aren't moving. But in reality, what he ended up saying is like, these fish aren't. Yeah. And then one time he walked into a bakery and he wanted to buy some bread. So he was like, somewhere in his mind, he was like, okay, so I feel like somehow Czech is more similar to Croatian than it is to Serbian. Now, Serbian and Croatian are very similar.
Right.
They're like the official language of the official name of the language that was spoken when we were all like one same country back in Yugoslavia was like Serbo-Croatian. So it's a very similar language. There's differences, but it's pretty much the same as like Czech and Slovak type. So he walks into this bakery and he's like, okay, so I feel like Croatian is more similar to Czech than Serbian is. and then he wants to buy a loaf of bread.
Yeah.
And bread in Croatian is kruh, which means circle in Czech.
Right.
So he walked in and he asked, he's like, could I have some kruh, please? And the lady was very confused. She was looking at him. She was like, what? And he wanted to buy a loaf that was round, so he started drawing a round circle in the air, and then he asked for kruh again, and she was even more confused because this guy is here just tracing a geometrical element. And then when he pointed to it, she goes, oh, chleb, which is the same word in Serbian for bread. So
he's like, I should have used Serbian.
He's like, I should have used Serbian. So either way, he walked out with a loaf out of that bakery. So he completed his task.
Right.
They were just like an extra step, which is really funny. And I've been retelling the story for like 10 years just because I find it so funny, and it's a great like illustration of how just because words in a language are similar and you feel like you can get away with it, it's not always the best strategy because you can't really be 100% sure what you're saying.
Right. And it's kind of the other thing that I want to stress to anyone learning a language. It's like if you take the theory of evolution where you don't have to be better than you have to be to just continue going on, I feel like people have this...
You need to be just good enough.
Yeah, you just need to be good enough at a language. Like if you get what you need and what you're looking for, then you have communicated effectively. And that's all that anyone can really ask of you when you're learning any other language. And I feel like people have this kind of... I'm happy that people want to be perfect in a language. I'm probably one of the people who's like the epitome of I have to be perfect, especially when it comes to accent anyway. Mm-hmm. But people need to be a little bit more relaxed, I think, and just know that, okay, I didn't say this perfectly. I messed up the grammar, and you shouldn't feel bad about that. You learn, and now you maybe know for next time, but you should still have a sense of accomplishment that you got what you needed and what you wanted, rather than letting this sense of, oh, I failed.
You would think.
Yeah, exactly.
You would think it works like that.
One important
You
thing
guys would think it works like that.
to mention, and I think this is, again, looking at the world through an Americocentric lens. I know that personally, when I was younger in the US, I would sometimes, I feel like I would subconsciously judge people based on their accent or based on mistakes they would make. And I think that's inherent to a country where, one, the language education overall is horrible. And if you speak English, I mean, that's the most used language, most universal language around the world. So I think maybe if you see a difference, Chris, learning, for example, Czech, which is a very niche language, I think people in a place maybe where multiple languages are naturally spoken, or if your language is more of a niche language, you're not so quick to judge others for not talking perfectly. Where in the US, where people aren't used to speaking multiple languages, someone else comes to the US and has a bit of an accent or speaks a little incorrectly, you're instantly, oh man, why doesn't this person know perfect English or whatever?
Yeah.
Like what they're not realizing if they are like, let's say, small-minded enough to think like this, is that this person speaks a whole other language. Don't know. They know everything that you know in a different language.
Yes.
They can express themselves probably the same way that you can in a different language.
Yes.
Plus, they know another one.
Right.
Yes.
So it's a little short-sighted.
I don't know if you feel those similar.
No, yeah. So I think I mean, there's an expression that says like the more languages you know, or how many languages you know, that's how many times a person you are. And for some, I can actually see that phrase being kind of a double-edged sword for somebody like you, because if you're not perfect in a language, you're like, well, now I'm only 2.5 times the person I was before. I should be 3 times the person I was before. Maybe. I hope I don't get that self-destructive.
Yeah, it's counterproductive, Chris.
But it's definitely, So like if you're somebody, like people in Switzerland, I had to read up about this because I have, till last week, I had no idea how Switzerland even functioned, given that they have 3 official languages. And
what's the third one?
Well, they officially speak French, German, and Italian.
Italian also?
Yeah.
Yes.
So there's Swiss Italian.
I didn't know that.
So what I read about them is that you have regions where that's the main language. The problems with the language will be prevalent more on the borders, and people are just so used to speaking a different language. They work in like 3 people. So like you have one person speaking Swiss Italian, one speaking Swiss German, and somewhere you find someone who knows both. And maybe along the borders, there be more people who speak a bit of both because maybe they kind of have to. But like you function because you are used to the other languages. You're fine with an accent or something like that. And it's just not a problem. But I feel like if you were to go to America and someone has a little bit of an accent, people will just be very like, come back when you have perfect English.
Generally pretty judgy.
So I think the more languages people are around, even if you yourself are just monolingual, I think more accepting and more kind to, you know, different speech patterns and whatnot, especially because America is just one big country of English, essentially. I mean, there's no official language, but you're kind of expected to speak English everywhere.
Right.
Come to
There's
Europe.
no official language?
There's no official language of the U.S.
That's a neat fact. I feel like that could pop up in like a trivia thing.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna.
And I think, if I'm not mistaken, part of the reason is because they don't want to force a language the same way they don't want to force a religion by the Constitution or something. But then you come to Europe, and there's different languages just all around each other. So I think Europeans already are at a disposition where they already know they can't understand each other without a uniting language, which in this day and age is English. So people here will be much more open to different accents and whatnot versus the US, where the most you get is someone just saying water and water
Whatever.
from Philadelphia, I think.
Water.
You know, there's no real extreme differences. So.
Are there some differences in pronunciation, like specific to New Jersey?
Well, in theory.
Give me some slang. Give me some New Jersey slang.
So first of all, yeah, like the typical stereotypical accent of New Jersey is like Joyzy. So whenever you go out of state and you say, "Oh yeah, I'm from New Jersey," they're like, "Oh, where's your Joyzy accent?" And I'm like, no one talks like that. I maybe heard it one time when I was in TFAB. And I think it was someone who came from like the southern part of the state. I think down there you can actually maybe hear it, but up in the north now.
Yeah, maybe more by the Jersey Shore.
And the show, the Jersey Shore, just made it more popular because I never watched it. I don't know exactly how they speak, but they kind of, I don't know. They gave a bad impression, I think, of how people
Definitely
in New Jersey
bad,
talk.
And generally how they are.
Yes.
And how they behave.
Yes. Overall bad rep.
Yeah.
I would say.
So actually, what I think we can maybe save for the next time we meet, if it's just one-on-one or if we're in the 3 of us again, is I actually have my high school yearbook.
Okay.
And I wrote down some of the slang of the time when we were there.
That's very interesting.
Awesome.
And I think that'd be really interesting to look at because I think Karel probably won't even understand some of it because I've looked at some of it and talked to my friends and I said, "Hey, do you remember this word?" And they're like, "No." And I'm like, "Well, I'm not insane. This was a word we used."
Yeah, you did not gaslight yourself. You wrote it down in a book for this very reason.
Exactly. So I think that would be kind of interesting to see if we can have a little language challenge between someone who is not familiar with it at all.
That would be awesome.
If he can guess,
I love this stuff.
And if Karel can try to remember what some of this meant.
That would be so cool.
It's my horrible memory.
Because I love like American regional accents and slang. And I'm kind of dragging myself up the wall. Not myself, I'm dragging my friends up the wall because I discovered this one video about a lady from Wisconsin talking about like Wisconsinese like Wisco phrases, and I'm just now constantly bringing that up at any point. Apparently, in like the northern part of Wisconsin, when they say that they're loaded for bear, but they say like, "Oh, we're loaded for bear," that means we're ready to go. Like we can move, and I love that so much.
So let's do quick.
Fetch that for me once, hey.
What?
That's what they say. Oop, let me squeeze right past you. Now I use that all the time.
Let me squeeze.
Let me squeeze right past you.
So let's maybe end on this. I'll give two examples because I lived in Pittsburgh where they have a whole book of Pittsburghese. And
Jovan's just.
I'm so excited. This is gonna be great.
so we'll do two examples. I'll do one from Pittsburghese and I'll do one from Morristownese.
I'm so
So let's start with the one that's maybe more foreign, Pittsburghese. Now, Karel, being an American, have you ever heard of Pittsburghese? Do you know anything about it?
All I know is that Pittsburgh apparently has a lot of bridges.
Okay. So now in Pittsburgh, they say the word yins. What do we think?
I know what that is. It's do you want to guess first?
Yeah, let's have the American go first.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Well, this is a little embarrassing. Yins.
Just had a conversation about this yesterday with Hannah, who's
Okay.
from Pennsylvania.
Okay. All
So-
right. So you have a little cheating.
Yins.
No. I knew this before.
Is
Okay.
is it beer?
Nope. It's not beer.
It's. Do you want to?
Go ahead. No,
Honestly.
go ahead.
So it's like you guys.
It's you guys.
Like you all.
It's you all.
Yeah, but they
Y'all.
also say use all.
Use all. Yes,
Oh, yeah.
that's a Pennsylvania thing.
Yes.
Shout out Hannah Shermer. We just confirmed this yesterday at dinner.
So yeah, they'll say like, you know, yins are going to town later, and it's really weird.
Oh, I love it. I love it. It's
I
so
kind
great.
of learned it because I went to school in Pittsburgh, but no one really spoke Pittsburghese. But my girlfriend's I think my girlfriend actually had a book of Pittsburghese, and she's from
The dream.
she's from a different town. She's from the other side of the state, but she did use a little bit of Pittsburghese herself. Sometimes she would say yins, which is interesting. So now for Morristownese, and probably
Where's Morristown?
it's
That's where we're from, Jersey.
Okay.
yeah, so 56
Jersey.
kilometers directly west of New York City, basically.
Mhm.
So my favorite one, I think, is juxt.
Juxt.
Yeah, so that's the past tense. So the basic form is like to jux
Oh.
something.
I don't even know.
Exactly, that's what I'm saying. Carl probably doesn't even remember.
Okay. To juxt something.
Yeah,
If you use it in a sentence, will it give it away?
it very well could, but I'll give you a sentence.
Okay.
So imagine I'm talking to my teacher, and I'm saying, "Oh man, my friend juxed my pen."
Oh, that's what I thought that could be. It's like stole.
Yeah,
They stole.
Like jacked my pen.
Like jacked. Yeah.
yeah, they jacked your pen.
That's what I thought. Now I feel bad asking for the hint because I would have guessed and it would have been really cool. Because that was my guess.
Do you
It's
want
like-
do you want to do a second take where you guess it first time?
No, but give me another word.
Okay. What's another fun one?
Juxt my pen.
Okay. So this one started to become a little bit more popular, I think, when we were seniors, maybe juniors. And they started to say, "Oh, I'm just going to marinate here for a little bit."
Just like sit down.
Yeah.
Like rest.
Yep. Just chill out.
Yeah, that makes total sense.
Yep. You're just going to marinate in some room.
Just sit and not do anything. Yeah.
Yep.
One thing I say a lot is ruminate.
Ruminate.
I'll let that ruminate in my head.
That's a good word.
I say that a ton, actually.
And that's just to think about it, or
Yeah, just like sit on it, sleep on it. You know?
okay. All right.
Just process it.
Yeah, that would be.
Yeah.
We need to do this. That needs to be an episode because
Yeah, we can.
I'm gonna have a blast with this.
We can definitely have a full episode of just slang.
Guessing slang, yeah.
See, my friends and some of my coworkers poke fun at me at just like how Americanized I am,
Yeah.
without having ever stepped foot on American soil.
You're the most American person who's never been to the U.S.
I think so. If I ever meet my like counterpart, I would actually be happy to know there's more of us out there. But I think that so every like little bit of like regional slang that I can pick up, I just think that's so fun. I think it's a blast, and I love it in Czech also. Like I'm constantly asking my teacher for phrases, so
Yeah.
I very much second this content idea.
All right, super. So I think then probably on that note we'll end for today. But thank you both for being here.
Thank you
I
for
know
having us.
Jovan, you've been a little tired, so you're a real trooper for staying with us.
Thank you, man. I was so excited to film this.
Yeah.
So I was gonna rally. I rally.
And
Awesome.
I live here, so I had a pretty short journey from my bedroom to the living room.
That's very true.
Yeah.
So I look forward to talking with you guys even more one-on-one, possibly also. So yeah,
Yeah.
see you guys next time.
Thanks for having us, Chris.
Everyone have a good day.
Yes, take a good nap.
It's nap time. Goodbye. Do widzenia. And
Do widzenia.
nashledanou to everyone watching
Skle.
and listening. And thank you for listening.
Tschüss,
Yes,
tschüss.
choose bus, autobus, letadlo, tramvaj.